Okay, I'm calling this special meeting of council back to order. First, I'd like to again respectfully acknowledge that this meeting has taken place on the traditional unceded territory that's now is First Nation. Just for the viewership's benefit, we did have additional information for 6A of our agenda. So we had several pieces of written public input. So that's for 6A of the agenda. So we're on to 6A of the agenda, right? Oh, sorry, actually, I guess almost skipped over it. We're on to 5 of the agenda, so public input. So persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record, may speak once for up to 2 minutes unless council resolves otherwise, and are limited to providing comment regarding this evening's agenda. Comments must be directed to the chair, must not be directed to individual members of council, staff, or the audience, and must not include personal issues. So if there's any speakers. And you just gotta press the little button there at the base. There you go, you're on. So just name and address for the record, please.
Lance Gesselbrock, 7365 Spence's Way. I want to talk about a budget item with the fire department. I noticed there was a letter written that's part of the agenda package that listed the number of fire departments here on Vancouver Island that have full-time chiefs. And I looked through that list and I said, why don't we add a few more on there? And I came up with Main Island, 2 full-time fire employees, North Cedar, 2, Arrington, 1, Machosen, 2, Dashwood, 2, Coombs Hillier, 1, Union Bay, 1. Both those last 2 are much smaller than Lantzville. This afternoon, I had the pleasure of speaking to the executive director of the Volunteer Fire Chiefs Association, a gentleman who's a retired chief of Duncan. He had a couple of good quotes for me. He said, the bar has been raised since the last year on the amount of training and record keeping. And this refers to Section 31 of the Work Safety of BC. He was really emphasizing with me, certainly the need for a full-time fire chief, but also he's concerned about the training officer time and record keeping. He said that we need to have a very structured, amount of record keeping in order to maintain, a legal department. I notice in our budget that we have very little time really for our training officer in addition to the chief. Training officer, he was really emphasizing how important it is nowadays to maintain records and to provide that service, or I shouldn't say service, but that necessary training for our troops. So the great liability of the department is not prepared to effectively and legally fight a fire. There's no budget that I see allotted for the Fire Chief Association of BC Annual Conference. It's the one and only conference, or I should say it's the most important conference for fire chiefs in BC to attend. I would imagine most of these small departments have their training officer and their chief attending.
So I'm just gonna interrupt you there. Yeah, by unanimous consent of council to extend the speaker's time. Okay, so I've already given you an extra 30, but keep
Good.
going for another 30 if you can wrap
30
up,
seconds
please.
is
Okay.
great. Thank you. He had mentioned to me that Duncan has just advertised for their full-time chief. I downloaded that, all the requirements for that, a couple of very key things here. Provide the vision, leadership, strategic direction of firefighters in a manner that contributes to their motivation, morale, commitment. Develops and maintains training programs in accordance with the level of service policy BC structured fire minimum standards. Here's one of the top bullets, takes a lead in organizing and assuming command of firefighting and related emergency activities. I can't think of any more or any position more important in our community than the fire chief. And I really would urge council to make that a full-time position. It's long overdue, and I think we're at risk without it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, next speaker, and we'll just have it at 3 minutes. Okay. Thank you.
Will Gesselbrock, 7483 Andrea Crescent. I'm always at risk following my brother on the speaker's list, and I'll try not to be redundant. But I'm speaking to appointing a full-time fire chief and expanding the resources we put towards our fire department. I know I don't need to remind any of you the importance of public safety in this community. It's our number one responsibility. And at the apex of that responsibility is the fire department, both for fire suppression and emergency medical services. There's nothing more important. A question I have is regards to the Nanoose First Nation, Snawas First Nation. Have we spoken to them regarding the funding of a full-time fire chief? I know we have an agreement with Snawas. We also have a protocol agreement, and the agreement with them is to use our fire services. So I don't know if Mayor Swain has picked up the phone for Chief Edwards, or if staff of the district has contacted staff of Sonawas, but I think that's a very important issue that this council needs to pursue, and I'll be all ears to hear what the response is in the future regarding these budget. The last thing I'll say is that I've spoken to one of the neighboring fire chiefs, Chief Penny of Nanoose. I worked with him closely when I was chairman of the Nanoose Volunteer Fire Society. And he provided me with a printout of the hours that he spends as chief in our neighboring community, and the number is 2,020. 2,020 hours per year. That was last year. And that works out to over 48 and a half hours a week. And that although that includes administration and obviously attending fire and training, it doesn't include any time for reviewing specifications for any new equipment the fire department is buying, or for reviewing the equipment once it gets in here. And very little time for LAFC, which is the local assistance to the fire commissioner. So I'm simply will be waiting and hope that this council will listen and look at our women and men of the paid on-call professional fire department that we have here in Lantzville and are very proud of. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker. And the microphone's already on.
Excellent. My name is Karen Proctor. I live at 6994 Lancewood Ave in Lantzville. Well, I was reviewing the budget package for tonight and considering what's going to be happening to the fire chief. I was left to consider what is fiscal responsibility. And I decided that the idea of fiscal responsibility is that government should be responsible to the needs and desires of its citizens. For government institutions, fiscal responsibility describes the ability to balance between government spending and tax. In fact, it would define the obligation of a jurisdiction to maximize incomes by using their spending powers while also ensuring that the service levels that a community needs and desires are not cut. Often, budget tricks can be used to make the government books seem stronger than they actually are. Council must recognize the importance of asset management, for instance. Is it prudent to deplete reserve funds? Is it prudent to reduce contributions to reserve funds? Is it fiscally responsible to use reserve funds to balance the budget? Council must ask themselves these questions, act accordingly, and then face public scrutiny concerning their responsibility of their decisions. Is it responsible to deny the fire department a full-time fire chief? I don't think so, and I doubt many people in Lantzville would think that choice would be responsible. It is impossible, in my opinion, to pass a municipal government budget that doesn't have an increase that at least correlates to inflation without cutting services. This evening, council is considering a budget that reflects an increase in taxes that is not as high as the current inflation rate. Given the cuts to services that are involved in this proposed budget, I think that council should consider some of their spending to date. I wonder, for instance, how much money council has spent creating the new tree protection bylaw. I also see that mayor and council will be receiving a raise and have also allocated $28,000 to attend conventions. Perhaps it would be fiscally responsible for the mayor and council to consider cutting these items from the budget before they eliminate the $19,000 needed to make our fire chief full-time. Thank you.
Additional speakers? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on in the agenda. So we're on, oh, sorry, did we have any remotely registered? I need to get. All right, so we're on to item 6 of our agenda. So we're on to the draft 2027 financial plan. So we have the continuation of review of the draft 5-year financial plan. There has been an update since the February 13th meeting. So through to council. Councilor Lerner, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm so excited to be here tonight to see this because after some of the additional questions were answered, we're now at a projected increase of 3.7%, where we started with 11. And I thank you to staff for preparing these spreadsheets. They're very helpful. And the color coding that has been added is very useful. Also, I appreciate council working hard together. You know, we don't always get everything that each one of us wants, but we always walk away doing this so well together and amicably. I'm thrilled to see after 4 years of astronomical tax increases, far surpassing inflation, to the point where the community saw a cumulative increase over the last 3.5 years of about 70%. Far surpassing almost any municipality in the province. It's good to see us getting back down to earth. So I am thrilled to see that we're headed around the 3.7%. I'm also thrilled by the strong commitment we have, and I just want to highlight a couple things in the budget before I get to a couple specific questions for staff. The vast increases to the fire department I appreciate the speaking and letters that we received to this. And I'm thrilled to see some wonderful increases, including more than $6,000 increase in cleaning, several $1,000s in equipment increases. You can find that on page 3 of 8 of your agenda. Wage increases is also on there, and I see a $36,000 increase for callouts on page 4 of 8. So I'm thrilled to see that we're supporting that, and not to mention the capital items that we looked at and kept in the last meeting for new equipment. So I'm thrilled to see that. One question I did have through your worship to staff was on page 4 of 8 of the budget, line item 01-5-25-592. I see $38,300 allocated to a preparedness, but I was under the impression at the last meeting that we were advised by our RDN representative that the UBCM grants would be 2024, not 2023. So I'm wondering if this $38,300 should still be there, or if I'm misreading it. Through your worship to staff, thank you.
I guess we have Deputy Director Nugent.
And if we could just repeat what page that was?
Yeah,
I
Oh,
have
sorry.
an 8-page document and,
Oh, sorry, on the big pullout, it's page 4 of 8.
4 of 8, thank you.
And it is line item 01-5-25-592. And it's $38,300 that I thought we had moved to 2024.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Lerner. Yes, I was under the impression that that was moved to, but evidently it still stands there. And yes, agreed, it was supposed to be moved out to 2024 because of the grant funding.
Thank you. So just to clarify, is that Is the 3.7% include that 38,300, which would be 1% of the budget there?
Yes, that is tax money.
Excellent. So then we would now be at 2.7% approximately. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Okay, additional speakers. Okay, Counselor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. That's great. We're down to 2.7%. So my idea from here, I've only got one potential reduction left that I want to look into, and that's professional development, but I'll speak to that during the course of the meeting. And I have 8 questions here, which I'll sprinkle throughout the conversation, which are directly related to how we can use funds, what they are, and to clarify some of the answers to questions that are on the agenda tonight. And the overview is that when we get within shooting distance, we're at 2.7 now. If we get down to a little over 2%, I will be proposing, perhaps make the motion tonight, that the balance left to bring us down to a 0 tax increase be taken from our COVID fund, which we still have a balance of 380-ish, I believe, or is it 280, something in that neighborhood. And so that would be 60,000 thereabout dollars that will be taken from the COVID grant we got, which was started at 1.3 million. And also, if some is needed from surplus to complete the picture, will get us down to 0. And the reason it's so important for me to do that is because people are looking for, I believe, a positive statement on our finances. That's the first reason. And the second reason is that I want to spend the next year somewhat restructuring and looking at our finances to see just what we can do in terms of increasing income and reducing expenses. And that's only council can do that. So if we increase our cash amenity contributions, there's one example we can do, and look for other ways to reduce expenses. I've got a fair list of things I want to implement over the next year. And then when we have a clear picture of where we're going after we've introduced the Councillor Jones has brought this up a number of times, and it's many municipalities in BC are doing this, and they're integrating their nature into their infrastructure, especially for drainage. So I'm looking for some savings there as well. And once we know all that and where we're heading, then I think we can take a realistic look as to how to fulfill that blueprint over the next few years. And we'll see what we can do in terms of where the tax increases or not fall at that time. And we're also in a period of time where we're going to be getting a fair amount of development upcoming, and it's most important we take full advantage of that income for real things that benefit residents, be it more walkways and for safety and so on. So I'll lead into my first question, please. This was in terms of the answer we got for tonight. And I want to separate the capital costs of the new LED streetlights we got from simply the electrical cost. And it doesn't have to be the answer tonight, but it's the answer I'm looking for if I get it by email. And it's just simply, we've got 8 months now of electrical costs from our new LED streetlights. So if we could kindly compare that to say the same 8-month period before with the old streetlights, I just want to get a picture if there are electricity usage reductions in our new streetlights. And that will give an indication if we go eventually to lower wattage like the foothills, or to not as many streetlights like on Spence's Way, then we can predict that will yet be another savings for next year or over the years as we go. So thank you, that would be great. And then also as a follow-up, if we could get what the capital balance is for the cost of our new LED streetlights. I believe it was in the neighborhood of $36 per light, and just the anticipated date of when that capital cost will be paid off. Thank you very much. And then the next one.
Sorry, I'm just gonna interrupt you there, Counselor Savage, just through to staff. Are you requesting motions for that information? Okay, so I think you got two requests, so two motions.
Okay, well, that was a question I just sent by email that was given, the answer was given to me without a motion, so if, I just thought it was part of the budget process. So if I just wanted more clarity on that answer. would
Probably,
that-
because I think maybe
We
the
just don't want to
information.
miss any,
Yeah,
you know,
okay,
any
very
questions
good.
that come up at the meeting. And
So-
then that way also Director Spears, if he needs more information, it's recorded correctly.
Okay, I move that staff be directed to report back to council with the approximate amount,
Okay, but pause.
the approximate difference between the costs of electricity
Okay,
between
oh, do you got it all?
the,
Okay,
That staff be directed to report back to council with the approximate cost of electricity.
yeah, the approximate difference in cost of electricity between the new LED streetlights and the old streetlights. And
So
further,
in the Q&A table that's on the agenda, does it not have the cost
no,
for 2020, 2021, 2022?
yeah, but that includes the capital cost of the streetlights, unfortunately. That includes the capital cost of the actual new LED lights. That's why we're not exposing just the electrical cost difference without the capital cost of the streetlights. Or at least to confirm if there are any savings. If there's not, then we want to leave the new
Okay, so I've
streetlights
got
out
that
of it.
staff be directed to report back to council with the approximate difference in cost of electricity between the new LED streetlights and,
The old streetlights, or the former streetlights. And further, that staff report on the balance of the capital cost of the LED streetlights and the anticipated date of payoff.
all right, do we have a seconder to that? Second by Counselor Jones. Any further discussion, Counselor?
Yes, thank you. It's just for the purpose of finding out what future savings can be made with, that's the whole point of the question. I've been wondering just what our savings might be. And if there are no savings, I was told by the streetlight team of Hydro that the real savings are when you go down to 39 watts, not so much the 70 watts, which most of our new ones are. So, and then if we're going forward with new streetlight policies, I want to I want everything we do to have the financial side tied in with it so we can, everything we do has a financial clear picture that is accompanying it. That's the purpose of it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jones, if you wish.
Thank you. Just briefly, I can support this motion. I've been very curious myself. The old lights are gone and we have the new LEDs, and the word we get regarding electrical is switch to LED. It's going to save you a lot of money. So really all we're asking here is for the details on that. It would be very interesting to know how much of a savings we have annually with the LEDs. And there have been several complaints that have come my way from residents saying that the 70 or 75 watt, whatever it is, LEDs that are installed are too bright for their residential location. It is often the case if you are just downhill of a light, your home, that the light is shining into people's homes. And so there have been some requests for the lower wattage, and it'd be nice if that does turn out to be a possibility and a cost savings as well. Thank you.
I do have a question through the staff, and I don't know who's going to answer this, but is it possible to actually figure this out, like realistically figure it out? We can do the hypothetical exercise of electricity costs and so on, but actually looking at the bill, looking at, you know, what percentage of lights have been switched over and so on, is it really realistic to make this, to figure this out? So Director Spears, it looks like you're going to chime in.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think one of the real issues is that it's not separated on our billing. What I'll have to do is contact BC Hydro and ask them directly what cost is associated with the capital expenditures and what is the actual revenue from the use of power as it stands with the new LED lights. So.
Okay, so it sounds to me like you're just gonna make a simple information request through the BC Hydro?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, let them work on it then. Is there anything further? Okay, if there's nothing, I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. Anything additional at this time, Councillor Savage? Go ahead.
Yeah, this is my last one for now. So this is the professional development. I've asked this a couple of times and looked into it, and the information has varied on from the binder to other items to now the answer to this question. So instead of spending too much time on this, I'd like to thank the planning department. They've come up with some savings from their professional development. So that has lowered it as well, our budget requisition. And so what I would propose to do, I'll just explain it, then make a motion, is that if I could just leave it up to staff to see what, I don't think we need to get into all of this, but just leave it up to staff to see if there are any professional development savings that could be had in any of the office departments, what they might be for, if they're not perhaps that necessary this year, and then just report back to council what there could be, and I'll just leave it up to staff. And that's not including the fire department, where I think their training is obvious why they need it and has to be continual. But just like the planning department did, if there's any other departments that feel that they could, you know, trim back a bit, that would be great. And we'll just see how it comes out with the report. So I move that staff report to council if there are any further savings possible from the professional development category in the 2023 budget, excluding the fire department and public works. Yep.
And we We have that seconded by Councillor Lerner for discussion. Anything further, Councillor Savage?
Yeah, just it might produce a little bit would be appreciated. We'll just wait and find out. So that's about it. Thank you.
So, sorry, I just want to clarify, that was excluding fire,
Excluding the fire department and public works.
public works? And the council one, like, that one includes not just your conferences, it's for meetings here too, so we don't really like to see a cut on that account.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Then that
Yeah.
will be in the, it doesn't have to be any major report, just an oral report back
Yeah.
or an email. That's fine. If there's nothing to do there that's acceptable, we'll just leave it up to you. Yep.
Councillor Lerner, anything further?
Yes, I can support this, just requesting a report and we'll see what comes of it. You know, this is a year where we are after, as I said before, so many incredible tax increases. It's an opportunity for us to tighten our belt this year and we are all doing that. I note that council had the opportunity to open up the bylaw for their compensation and chose not to, giving themselves no raise this year. So it is definitely something that we're also seeing a tightening of our belt here. So I think that it's an opportunity here for us to see what comes back of this report and then make a decision from there. Thank you.
Sorry, through staff.
Yeah, sorry, we just wouldn't want any misunderstandings. Council's remuneration is based on their bylaw, and the bylaw provides for CPI increase, and council received emails telling you that your increase was 6.76%.
Yes, I understand
Okay,
that. My
okay.
clarification is that we had the opportunity to change that bylaw and change that compensation and did not. And
Okay.
that the rate is set by Victoria, a number we have no control over as enshrined in the bylaw adopted by the
Correct.
previous council. Thank you.
Your worship, excuse me.
Yes, go ahead.
Just want to go back and hopefully Deputy Director Nugent can answer this. Goes back to the emergency preparedness, the $38,000. If I understand that correctly, that's a grant and it's in and out. So there's no effect, I think, on the, and possibly Deputy Director Nugent can clear that, but I don't think there's any effect on the taxation.
Okay, I would seek, thank you, CEO Campbell. If possible, could we seek clarification through the chair to Deputy Director Nugent on that item? And if the answer is not available now, maybe through an email?
I think that's what's happening right now. So Deputy Director Nugent, are you able to respond to that, or do you need to respond at a later date or time?
Well, Mr. Mayor, through to council, CAO Campbell is absolutely correct. My apologies about saying that was tax dollars. It does go on and back off again. And part of that may, I need to confirm about something that the kits that are involved or part of that are eligible. There may be some question of eligibility for the other part, but I'm not positive of the exact amounts, but it is on and off the spreadsheet. So my apologies.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay. All right, additional comments, changes, information requests. Councillor Jones and then Councillor Lerner.
Yes, thank you. Would just like to have a little bit of discussion that puts the situation we're in with respect to the budget in some perspective. It's not easy for residents to make some of these determinations in looking at these line-by-line items, so I've done a little bit of work to come up with some figures that can shed light on things. Wages and benefits, staff wages and benefits, now total just about close to $1.9 million annually, just a bit under $2 million. And to put that in perspective, our 2023 operating budget is $3.198 million. So this means that about 2/3 of our operating budget is going to staff wages and benefits. Looking back, when we incorporated in 2004, our staff budget was under $450,000, and today's value for this money is roughly $986,000, or a little under $1 million. And that's using very conservative figures for inflation, an average of 4% a year compounded, and a conservative figure of 2% for annual cost of living. So what we are seeing here is that our budget for staff wages and benefits is doubled over a time period when our population has barely grown. And to put it simply, the rise in staff wages and benefits has far exceeded inflation. So why is this? Well, the problem we face is the staff wages and benefits has grown to a point where other needs, other services such as infrastructure are begging for attention. But we can't simply spend so much in one area without another area suffering. And I think that's what residents, from what I hear, are feeling right now. Much of the increase in the staff wages and benefits is caused by an increase in staff numbers. The impact of this alone in the 2023 budget is an additional $135,000 on this year's budget. What I'm saying is that without any change in staff numbers, we have $135,000 that we need to come up with, and that is to pay the annual increases in wages and benefits. That amount alone requires a 4.5% tax increase. Council is forced to be very frugal this year, to be fiscally responsible. We've had to make some tough decisions. And in doing so, so far, we have taken a proposed 11% tax increase, and we're now down to 2.7%. That's about $78,000. Tonight, we can consider options for taking the tax increase down to 0%. I support the 0% target. My feeling is that residents have shouldered a tax burden, a huge tax burden, over the last 3 years, a 68% increase in taxes. This year, our residents deserve a break. It's not time to tax them further. Having said this, residents certainly should not expect a 0% tax increase in future years, although I do hope we can avoid double digits. To end on an optimistic note, I believe we can achieve 0%, and I believe that as the year goes on, we will achieve further savings, which will be good news for the overall budget, and I look forward to seeing how all of this unfolds. Thank you.
All right, anything, I think Councillor Lerner, or actually first timers, so Councillor Mundell, and then we'll go around.
Wow, those are some pretty amazing and astronomical numbers that Councillor Jones had presented. And I think we are all aware of the staff increases in wages over the past term, prior to our term. And this, again, is just not something that we take lightly, having to take a look at these numbers and make tough decisions. However, I do not think that it is responsible this year of years where we do hear that we have to keep up with the costs of inflation to be shooting for a 0% increase. I believe that this is irresponsible for us to be considering zero when everything is going up, and I fear that it puts us in a position where we will be having to make a giant increase or a larger increase in the future. I think it would be prudent to consider a moderate increase, again, just to avoid in the future having to go into potential double-digit increases again, which is obviously a big impact for the residents of this community. So as much as I would like to hit that 0 mark as well, I think we all could use a little bit of relief from the cost of living increases and taxation from all over that is going to be going up, but I just don't think that it's the right thing to do. I believe that we need to be moderate in our increases, but that we do have to be responsible that way. And we've heard in the past that Lantzville was exempt or avoided large increases or any increases for many years. And then we had larger increases to potentially kind of catch up to where we are now. So I do think to avoid that, we really should consider still having a moderate increase. I don't want to deplete reserves. I don't want to, take, I hate that saying of taking from Peter to pay Paul. But I do understand the motivation behind this, and I support that it's a great initiative to try and shoot for, but I do fear that it will put us in a worse position in the future. Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna have a turn and then then we'll keep going around. All right, so I do have a question through to Director of Public Works, and this could also go to Deputy Director I'm sorry, Richardson, but Nugent. So with respect to it's under transportation infrastructure, so this would be page. Make sure I got the right page number here. Well, anyways, I think it's page of the agenda. Anyways, it's the capital financial plan stuff. So anyways, we'll just go to the line number, and that's 065 55 527. So this has to do with the multi-use path Lantzville Road. So there's notes in there already, and I understand that this is basically being withdrawn, no grant funding and so on. But I did want to amend that. So I don't know, I was gonna ask through the staff, is it appropriate just to keep that same GL line number, or should we create a new one? Because it has to do with the multi-use pathways, so. And I think we've already expended some resources towards that. Or maybe Director Spears, if you, and maybe I'll just speak to it real quick. So what I'm hoping to do is just put a placeholder in for a multi-use trail from Peterson Road to Lantzville School Road. And the figure that I have, that I'll be using is 250,000.
To your worship, it would probably be best to use a whole new GL for
Okay.
that. And that way there, this GL will just carry forward until such time council feels comfortable in doing the multi-use path.
Okay, so I'll just make the motion then that staff be instructed to insert a new line item into the transportation infrastructure financial plan. For the purpose of a multi-purpose trail between,
Multi-use or multi-purpose?
well, I don't
I don't
know,
know. What have we been using, Fred?
I think, is it multi-use? Okay, multi-use.
It's a multi-use.
Yeah, we
yes.
don't want to have mopeds on there and stuff, so yeah, multi-use trail between Peterson Road and Lantzville School Road. And further that,
And sorry, is this along Lantzville Road?
well, between, so a multi-purpose trail between, or multi-use trail between Peterson Road and Lantzville School Road. I would just make the assumption that it's gonna be off the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it'd be like parallel to,
Parallel, yeah,
That's-
well, and that's how our current sidewalks are in through the village, so. And further that, $250,000 be inserted into the 2023 financial plan. And I'll just leave it there. Unless staff wants to define the funding source, I was just gonna leave staff to, because there's multiple, whether staff can recommend where we can fund that out of, there's multiple sources, but is there a seconder? Second by, well, Councillor Savage, you're very fast. So anyways, you know, with the recent closure of the trail between Lancewood and the Seaview Elementary School field, this may be a potential solution to creating a new safe walking path for pedestrian traffic between the Leland Peterson subdivision and Seaview Elementary. And then also to the village, not just to Seaview Elementary. So I'll just leave it at that for now. Councillor Savage is seconder.
Thank you, yes. So I think the first thing is that this is important. This is simply a placeholder. We need to get a cost estimate and so on. And I have submitted a motion for our next Wednesday council meeting for a cost estimate for two things. One is a gravel path from Peterson Road to School Road, and then a second estimate from Leyland Road to Peterson Road on the south side of Lantzville Road. So we're really achieving the same thing. It's just a question of the cost estimate. So perhaps, I don't know what you had in mind for your surface, Mayor Swain, in terms of be it asphalt or whatever. And so if we do have different ideas for the surface and the width and the presentation of it, then perhaps we can get cost estimates for both and then measure it from there. My idea of the gravel one was it would just be more inexpensive and simply follow the terrain of the there. And there is a ditch section that runs from Huddlestone Road down towards Seaview School. So we'd have to find some treatment for that would be the only things to consider there. But I really like the idea of putting this placeholder in. It could be far less than this. And we had already made a motion to do this from all the way from Superior Road to the village. So it's in keeping with that, but this is tailor-made for this situation where we want to help make the roads safer for school kids that are now walking a new route to school, a lot of them. So I'll leave it at that. So I'll still leave my motion on. I've already submitted it. So maybe we can further refine it next Wednesday, but for now, this is good for a placeholder, just so it's in there. And I think this would qualify for gas tax. We still have a reasonable balance for the COVID restart grant, and so on. So we'll see where that might come out of, but I think it can all come out of reserves. There's no need for any tax increase for this, is my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Councillor Lerner.
Yes, thank you to the mayor for bringing this forward. I think it's a brilliant idea. We are seeing issues, and I've received numerous concerned residents writing me with issues regarding walking along Lantzville Road. I think this is a smart idea to put a placeholder in there. We definitely have the $700,000 in gas tax that was not spent elsewhere earlier in the term, but that was changed. We also have potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars coming from the province, as was indicated by the premier. So I think there's a whole bunch of options here for funding it, and putting the placeholder in there for now, I think makes it very clear to the community that we care about providing this safe walking path. So thank you. That's incredibly important, and I appreciate it.
All right, additional speakers. Councillor Jones, go ahead.
Yes, I'm already excited to see this and thinking about trail standards. I just point out that we have something called the Trans-Canada Trail, which many of you may have been on bits and pieces of it. It is a multi-use path. There is a standard for its build, and it is I guess it would closely resemble kind of a hard pan gravel surface, so it is permeable. And I would hope that would be considered. I can see many people walking and biking on that, and it's also up to the standards for horses. So maybe that will happen too.
Councillor Mandel.
Just curious as to where the $250,000, if that's just like a ballpark, or if we have an idea. I'm just wondering if maybe Director Spears could maybe in the future, it might not be easy to come up with a number just in this moment, but to give us an idea about how much something like this might cost. Yeah, just. Yep.
Sorry, I think he's
Okay.
prepared to answer now. So Director Spears, if you,
Through the chair, I would never give you an exact number, but I can give you some
course
of the
not.
details of what would have to be done. As Councillor Savage alluded to, there is a drainage ditch that would have to be partially infilled, and likely we could probably incorporate some swale and other treatment facilities in that ditch as well. But there would also be the area along top of Harper Road. There's a large culvert there, so that would have to be extended out. But beyond that, it would be pretty easy sailing to go from basically Harper Road right out to Leland Road to put a gravel path in. So
Any
think that's-
follow-ups, Councillor Mandel?
Just regarding if we didn't go necessarily gravel, also just considering that gravel is fine. I just don't think it's the easiest to bike on, and I think probably a lot of the kids headed down to school will be biking. So I just wanted to sort of plant that seed.
uh,
Geez. Director Spears?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to touch on the gravel surface, I guess we have to really consider the life cycles of the costs, which would include maintenance. So there is always an option to get pricing for both, one with just the gravel and the other one with asphalt, and potentially do a life cycle cost with it as well. So.
Okay. Councillor Jones?
Yes, thank you. Just to address Councillor Mandel's concern, this is exactly why I raised the point of the Trans-Canada Trail, because that is built primarily for biking. So it's not a loose gravel surface. It would be fine for kids on bikes and, like I say, for horses. So it's a 8-inch deep kind of build. I'm sure Director Spears is familiar with it, and a cost for that quality of build for a multi-use trail would be of interest to me and perhaps to others on council.
Okay. Anything further? And again, this is just a placeholder, so at any point, council wants to amend the financial plan, we can do that at any time. But again, this just is a simple placeholder. In terms of the magnitude, sure, it is a bit of a take your breath away kind of thing for a short stint of trail. But my experience thus far, local government, it's costs are escalating on lots of fronts, and trails. I remember even when we had the initial costs for the section between even Lantzville and Lantzville and Dickinson all the way up to Shook. You know, it's and even going the other way. You know, it's expensive. So again, it's just a simple placeholder. And through the staff, I'm assuming you'll probably need a motion during another meeting to start or to prepare some kind of report on this. Is that correct? So we have the financial placeholder, but in order to move forward on getting some preliminary numbers. Okay. So I'll make that probably at our next council meeting, probably just bring it as a late motion, but that's probably the easiest way of dealing with that. It's probably not appropriate to get into other motions tonight. So I'll just move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, I'll make another one real quick and similar thread. And then we'll go to Councillor Lerner. So the next one is again inserting a new line item. And so to instruct staff to insert a new line item with respect to the restoration of the Lantzwood Road to Seaview Elementary School Trail.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of it. Was the council instruct staff to insert a new line item?
Yeah, to insert a new line item with respect to the restoration of the trail between Lantzwood Road and Seaview Elementary School field. And further that inserting $75,000 into the 2023 financial plan.
Could you repeat the number?
75,000?
Thank you. And that was 2023.
Into the 2023 financial plan. And that was seconded by Councillor Savage.
And was that going in the same spot as the other one, that transportation?
Oh, yeah, sorry, into the transportation infrastructure. Yeah, yeah. Okay, and I was seconded by Councillor Savage, just speaking to this motion, again, that section of trail has been closed. There has been a community, media release that's gone out to the community. It's posted on the district's webpage with respect to the closure of that trail. So in the event that we can work out a solution with the landowner, this money would help or would go towards, and again, it's another placeholder, but would go towards the acquisition of land, creation or installation of fence and trail and any associated costs. So that could also include surveying and so forth. Again, it's just a placeholder for doing that to essentially restore that trail or pathway. So, Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, this is this is an example, if we can accomplish this, that this is an example of something that directly benefits residents. So if we're using this surplus money or we're using our CAC's community amenity contributions, they're up to 199,000, which I'll be asking about shortly. There's a portion of it we have to do something with. But there'll be enough there as well that can contribute. So this is the whole idea of the reserves, is to spend it on things like this gas tax. I can't think of anything that benefits residents more. There's so many people using it. You know, trails and pathways are important in every area in terms of use and direct benefit. So fully support it.
Okay, additional speakers. Councillor Jones.
Well, you may have found a solution to a very big problem, made a lot of people extremely happy if this works out. I personally feel it's very important that there be district property for such a trail. This should be a permanent feature in Lantzville. The residents should never have to go through what they've been through in the last month, I guess it's been, since this trail was closed. So it speaks to the bigger picture that in Lantzville, we need to put some resources and some attention to a trail network for walking and for biking throughout Lantzville, and in particular to connecting key areas like the Lancewood area to the school would be one. But also when we look at new developments, we should be considering where do people need to go, or there are schools or daycares that kids in a community need to access, and we should be arguing for those spaces to be district, I guess rights of way might be the right term, you know, as part of our negotiations with various developments. So I hope we can get this one solved quickly. And I thank you, Mayor Swain, for coming up with this particular idea. We'll see how it goes.
Councillor Lerner, go ahead.
Yes, I fully support this. I think it gives a placeholder here so that if the opportunity arises to rectify the situation that the residents are currently experiencing, we have that placeholder in our financial plan ready to go. So I fully support this. Thank you.
Councillor Savage?
Yes, and we've forgotten the most important thing with trails and pathways. They're prime opportunities. It's almost compulsory, Mayor Swain, that there's a ribbon cutting ceremony. So get your scissors ready. What color ribbon would you like?
Any ribbon will do. Any additional comments? Councillor Mundell?
Just trying to establish on my map here exactly where you're referring to, and if, again, forgive me for being.
So that would be like where the existing, I guess it's I don't know what we call that piece from an end of Lancewood Road, the pathway that already exists. I'm guessing it's is a single track path. Well, I don't know if it's a road right away right now, or if it's an easement. I don't know what the technical land use designation is at this time.
It's actually a right of way.
Okay.
It's a narrow, it's like a lane, the width of a lane, sort of, for lack of a better description.
So it just extends from there to the, I believe it's the northeast corner of the field? Or no, hold on, southwest. Southwest corner of the field, sorry, I get mixed up with my directions sometimes in Lantzville. I just have to turn around and then we're southwest. Yes, so southwest corner of the school field. So it just runs along the back of the properties, that's the main path. There's one that kind of goes diagonally and traverses the, I guess the bottom or the corner of that property, but anyways. All right, so I'll just simply move to calling the question, then all those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, I think that's it for me for the moment. Councillor Lerner, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, well, Councillor Savage, great minds think alike, because I also had a question about the community amenity contributions. The balance I see is $199,000, so just shy of $200,000. And I did see in the answer received by council that there is a portion that is required to be spent on specific items. So through your worship to staff, what part or percentage or dollar amount of the 199,000 is committed to those specific items and what remains unrestricted?
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Lerner, $40,000 is tagged for water improvements, or other community contributions. I think that's how it's phrased. So it is restricted, but not entirely to water.
Thank you. So that would leave approximately 159,000 unrestricted. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Savage.
Thank you. I'll just finish off with my last three questions, please. So with the ones we're just talking about, the community amenity contributions, was that done by a motion by council that mandated a certain percent of CACs goes to the water improvement? Or I forget.
Your worship, through the council, in that particular instance, those were that was what was volunteered by the applicant.
Yeah.
And it was suggested by the applicant at the time of the application going forward to council. And we basically just accepted
Yeah.
that request.
Yeah, so as the CACs grow, the 40,000 will remain static. It doesn't, yep, gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought it was something, thank you.
Sorry, I just had a quick follow-up on that, Councillor Savage, just through Director Limshu. Now, that was that from there's between two property owners, right? So
That's
it's
correct. It was
20,000
for the Harwood rezoning,
yeah.
And so CACs are voluntary contributions, and so that's what the applicant put forward in terms of a dollar value, and their suggestion was to put it towards the water improvements for the area.
And I'm guessing I hate to take some credit, well, maybe I'll take some credit from that because I have harped on, that, with respect to the improvements that have been made to our current water system, including a $1.3 million Nanaimo Lantzville water agreement, that significant money has gone out to allow development to occur in Lantzville. It's created that redundancy of water. So, and I'm guessing that's probably part of the reason why that was framed that way, is to go back into the water system, because that's the very thing that's made a lot of this development in Lantzville occur. So without the expansion to the water system, or not expansion, sorry, the increased capacity of our water system through the Lantzville Nanaimo water agreement, none of this would be happening. So anyways, all right, so Councillor Savage.
Okay. So question number 3 in your sheet here we were sent out earlier today. It's the second page of this handout we got. Question number 3, and this has to do with building inspection fees. So basically, I thought by law, all surplus building inspection fees could only be spent on future building inspection costs, perhaps in a year where there are few building inspection fees collected. I believe that was from an email that I got a few years ago. So I'm just wondering, on the answer to the question, how it can go into general surplus, and the reason I ask that is because if it's in general surplus with our former bylaw, it wouldn't be allowed to be spent on operating expenses, and with our new amended bylaw, the general surplus would be allowed to be spent on operational costs or reserves. So I'm just wondering how you square that circle if it's supposed to be just for future building inspection costs, how it could go into the general surplus fund.
I don't know who's going to take that question. Is that through the Deputy Director Nugent?
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Savage.
Yeah,
not
and sorry, just as a point of privilege, Director Nugent, if you could just speak really close to the microphone, a little hard to hear you here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not aware of a bylaw that indicates that we are to put surplus building inspection fees into a reserve. If you could forward that email you referred to, that would be very helpful. But as far as I know, there is no reserve, and building inspection fees are normally put into general revenue and treated as such, and ending up in surplus if there is one.
Yeah, so that's correct then. From what I'm understanding is that any building inspection fees have to stay with building inspection and be used for future years just for building inspection costs. Is that what you're saying?
She said the exact opposite.
Oh, she
goes-
said the opposite.
Yeah, she did.
Oh, okay. And through to Director Coates, what's your thought on that?
Well, I'm not aware. I echo what Director or Deputy Director Nugent said, is that if you could forward the email to us,
Yeah.
we're not aware of any regulations. I'm wondering if it was something, sometimes the regional district has different odd rules that we don't have. I haven't in my time seen anything that said that the building inspection fees need to go into a reserve. Certainly, any municipal fees that we have by bylaw, they have to be based on the cost of the service. We can't, often we'll say we can't have inflated fees. They have to be based on what it costs to provide the service. That's the only thing I'm familiar with.
Yeah, so it can't be spent on anything, can it? Or?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
can be
it
spent
Oh, it
on
can be
anything.
spent on anything, okay.
Yeah.
So through to
Yep, that's fine. It's
Councillor
solved then,
Savage.
thank you.
Yeah, so they're like regional district, like because everything is just split into services, then I think what Director Coates has indicated is correct. It would have to stay with that service, the revenues associated with it, because that's how they treat it. And then from there, they have the complicated exercise of splitting out all the costs and everything else to all the different electoral areas and member municipalities, and it all depends on if they even are subscribe to that service. So it gets really complicated, but they have to keep it with this service, whatever revenues are generated. That's my understanding.
But we were just told it can be spent on.
Here we
anything.
do that.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes everywhere here.
All right, so you
Splash the
can-
money around.
so
Yeah,
you- so
regional
you-
district, it's tight, right? They have to
Yeah.
keep the money
All right,
where it's
so
collected.
when, so that's fine. So there's another source of income then we've just found, but I would still be cautious about that to make sure that our building costs are left a healthy amount, so whatever. All right, that's great, thank you. And then the next question, please, is the development application fees. Into what reserve are they placed? And I'm just wondering why the fees exist. If planners are already getting paid a wage, what would be the justification of the fees? Or in other words, what cost do they cover? And what can these fees be spent on? Thank you. Application fees, just meaning a rezoning application, OPC amendment application, et cetera.
So I'll just speak to it in general. I mean, I think Director Coates alluded to this just a while ago. I mean, any fees that we collect in the form, to process applications is generally to reflect the cost associated with staff's time in processing that application. So it's our time discussing the application, receiving the application, reviewing it, discussing it with the applicant. There might be advertisements required for meetings and so forth. It's meant to be sort of cost neutral.
Yeah.
In some cases, it works out that way. In other cases, it doesn't. It just depends on the complexity of the application.
Yeah, so it's a cost on paper, I got it. And that can be spent on anything, the surplus?
I believe, the same would apply for any surplus fees, similar to the questions around the building permit fees.
Yeah, so does it go into the general operating surplus? That's the big one, the 1.3 million one approximate now, or 1.4.
I'm not in, I should probably defer to Deputy Director Nugent. what we're talking about is revenue and expenses. And so, you know, we have revenue coming in, it's the fees that we're charging, and then we have expenses for running the operation. So it's not just the director's time, it's the support staff, it's the finance staff, it's the administrative fee. So it's not a funnel that is unique to any one function. So you know how your budget is set out, and it shows the amount of revenue brought in, and then there's another column that shows the expenses going out. So whatever's left is general surplus.
Yeah, so it is general surplus, so that's an important point, because these application fees come from residents or people doing business in Lantzville. So therefore, for me, there's nothing wrong with returning some of it. As I say, I wouldn't get into that habit, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with returning some of it back to residents in the form of a tax decrease. It's just makes perfect sense. And
So
So-
I probably should have deferred to the deputy director to explain it further. We can't overcharge and then have funds. Like, it has to balance.
Yep, no,
Our
understood.
expenses
Yep.
balance out to
Yep.
our revenue.
Yep, understood. So, all right, well, that's great. That does that then. And I've just got a motion that I'll make since we're at the budget here after I hear from others. So just so in case you think the meeting's over, that's all I've got left to do. Thank you.
So we'll go Counselor Lerner and then Counselor Jones.
Yes, thank you. Well, just a discussion point, and then I don't know if Councillor Savage, you mentioned a motion, so I'm not going to take too much time, but I would note that there was discussion at a previous meeting of the guidance to keep 1.1 million of general surplus, and I see the balance of 1.376507, so that's more than $250,000 more. And also the COVID grant, the balance is about 370,000. So well over $500,000 in COVID grant and surplus beyond the 1.1 million. So I would generally support hitting a 0% target this year using some of those funds, assuming we're at, let's say, somewhere around 3.5%. That's about $100,000 to cover. I think it sends a strong statement, and it also provides some relief for taxpayers. But I concur with what Councillor Jones said earlier, that that's not something we would be doing every year. This would be sort of the type of thing to provide relief after the previous almost 70%. I think it was 68% cumulative increase, and then provide that relief this year, and then have the opportunity next year to revisit some of the items that we were not able to afford this year. And so that's sort of where I stand. I do see a lot of potential funds coming in over the next year. And as Councillor Savage mentioned, also the ability to take a very close look at our financial plans over the next year so that we can come back ready to roll in 2024. So I appreciate all of these options. Thank you.
Yeah, Deputy Director Nugent, you have your hand up?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Lerner and to the rest of council. I would exercise caution with regards to the surplus at this point, because the 1.3 million is the balance at December 31st, 2021. We have not had the audited financial statements prepared yet for 2022, and that figure may change.
Thank you. Is the $373,000 in COVID grant current?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Jones, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that conversation. I think we'll be coming back to that as soon as I'm done with a really quick, easy motion. We brought this up last time, and I think I need to make a motion for it to happen, which is simply that the next version of the budget we get include the headings for the broad GL categories. Through the chair to Deputy Nugent, you know what I'm referring to? these headings. They were on, I think, the first version, and then they have not been on the last two versions of the budget line by line, and it's quite helpful in going through the budget to know the category that the line by line items are coming, being, attributed to. The department, thank you.
So you're referring to the department, like, say the number 20, referring to the fire department.
Yes, the GL numbers change, and as they change from their 20 to 30 to 40, that kind of thing, there is a different department that they go under. So yes, those headings, like I say, they were in the first version we had, and I've just been missing them since then, so.
Yes, they were aggregated together with the revenues and expenses. That would be a major reformat of the spreadsheet that was requested for line by line. Yes, I can do it. If you wanted the revenues grouped together with the expenses, or would you just prefer the revenues grouped by fire department, say public works?
I think I'm probably not being clear, and we'll let Councillor Lerner add some clarity to it. Okay.
If it's okay, I'll just second the motion, and I think what's being spoken to is that the revenues and the expenses can stay separated the way they are now. It's just that whether it's on the spreadsheet or a separate table of contents or something, we often get to something where it says wages, and we don't know exactly which department, or let's say pension, and we don't know which department it is. So just, it's not necessary that each line item has to change or that the order would change, but that there would be something explaining that the prefix 5-10 refers to fire department, let's say, and prefix 6-30 refers to public works, and so on and so forth, so that we have an idea of which department we're looking at when we're reading the line items, if that makes more sense.
Yes, absolutely, and that is very easy to do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any additional comments? Councillor Savage?
Yeah, I'll just make a motion now, if I may, please.
I think we have a motion. Yeah, there's a motion on the floor.
I'm sorry, what's the motion?
Okay, Director Coates, can you read the motion back, please?
That the next version of the budget include headings.
Okay, sorry, I didn't realize that was a motion, but I agree, thank you.
That's fine. Deputy Director Nugent has a clear understanding of what we're talking about, so I'm fine with it being that simple.
Okay. Okay, unless there's anything further, I will call the question. Okay, we're ready to vote. So, see, it's like you're signaling to speak. Okay, those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried unanimously. All right, sorry. Oh my God, it's 8:30. Quick draw. All right, councillors. Did Councillor Mundell, did you have your hand up? I can't. Okay, so Councillor Savage, go ahead.
All right, that the draft 2023 to 2027 financial plan be amended by reducing the 2023 tax increase to, that the draft 2023 to 2027 financial plan be amended. That's out of the wording we were given in the agenda. By reducing the 2023 tax increase to 0, by supplementing the budget tax income with the COVID Restart Grant funds and also funds from the general operating surplus only if needed.
That the draft 2023-2027 financial plan be amended by reducing the 2023 tax increase to zero by supplementing the budget tax income with the COVID Restart Grant funds and also funds from the operating surplus only if needed.
Yeah, is it called the general operating surplus, is it not? Or- I don't have it in front of me here, but,
It's the accumulated general operating surplus reserve fund.
okay. So it's from the accumulated general operating surplus reserve, only if needed.
And that was seconded by Councillor Lerner. Any further discussion, Councillor Sutton?
Yes, thank you. I'm really pleased that we're in such shooting distance now. We're 2 point something, it sounds like, of a tax increase now, which is in the neighborhood of $60 to $70. The COVID Restart Grant is meant for a broad spectrum of items, and I would leave that up to staff to apply which ones would apply where. And that means in all the items we're spending money on in the budget, they may find enough of those items to get to this 60 to 70,000, 80,000, whatever it's going to be, shortfall to bring us down to 0% tax increase. And that's what the COVID Restart Fund is for many of these items in the budget, and hopefully all of it will be taken care of by that. And if not, the backup, which may be a very small supplement after that, would be the surplus fund. And as I say, many of these funds come from all sorts of different sources, but I like to see them going, if we are going to be spending them, to things of maximum benefit to residents. And this is a benefit to all residents. It's a statement they'll be extremely pleased with, that they're facing no tax increase this year at all. And I fully appreciate what Councillor Mundell says. That's exactly how I think, that you don't want to be putting yourself in a position where it becomes harder next year. However, I've studied this for a number of years, and I know of all the income that's coming in. We just have now seen the CACs are up to 199 minus 40,000, that's 159. We've got more coming in this year. We have also the tax income from new development coming, and the list is long. I've got a list of about 10 items for which will be getting us in good shape for next year. So I'm confident that this is just until we have time to fully study the budget, and then we can go into it with a completely open mind next year and start working on the reserves, et cetera, et cetera. But for this year, I think it's a very small amount now to be supplementing with. We've gone from 1.3 million down to 380 thereabouts, or is it 280 with the 373. So we've already spent about 900,000 of the COVID grant. So I don't think it's asking a lot to spend another 70 or 80,000 for this budget. and then only use the surplus if needed. So it's fairly simple, but I hear you, Councillor Mundell. I totally agree with your sentiment there. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lerner, seconder.
Thank you. Yes, I can support this. I think it provides that relief for the community at a difficult time where we're seeing hard cost of living issues and people being really priced to the limit. And I understand it would be a one-time option. The other thing that I think is worth noting is that the budget still has a lot of reserve contributions in it. So if we're spending from the accumulated surplus or the COVID relief grant, we aren't necessarily touching any of our other reserves for this purpose, and we're still contributing to them. So I'm not too worried about depleting those reserves because those are still scheduled to be increased. And indeed, the big pullout here, operating reserves, page 14, that was sent around with an update, shows that if we follow it through to the 2027 projections, most of our reserves close on a large surplus by the end of the 4 years at the current projection, with only some of the asset replacement one going down based depending on whether or not we get various grants and so forth. So I do appreciate this motion. I think the community will appreciate it, and I can support it. Thank you.
Deputy Director Nugent, I see your hand is up.
I'll speak to this after the motion because it doesn't really have anything to do with the motion, but it has to do with the reserves. Sorry, my timing is off.
Okay, sure, fair enough. Councillor Jones and then Councillor Mundell.
Yes, I can support this motion for reasons that I stated earlier to do with the huge tax increases, close to 68% that residents have had over the last few years. I feel it's time to give them a break. I'm very encouraged that we're already down to in the neighborhood of 2.7%, which is equivalent to something under $80,000. And if our COVID is sitting at 373 or something like that, $1,000, this is, well under 25% of what remains in that fund. So we shouldn't be touching reserves at all. And that's a nice thing too. Thank you.
Councillor Mundell.
As I said earlier, excuse me, I will not be supporting this. I don't think that it's a good idea to, with the costs of everything going up, to shoot for a 0%. I'm very concerned that this will put us in a position in the future where we will be in a situation having to make a large percent tax increase. We do have money that we need to be putting towards reserves for policing in the future and other areas. Take a drive through Lantzville, almost anywhere. There's so much work that needs to be done in this community as far as our roads and many different things. And I think all of those costs are just going to increase over time. So without putting money into reserves to deal with these issues, the costs in the future are just going to add up even more so. So I think having a modest, 2 or 3% isn't asking, I think, too much. And I just, again, puts us in a bit of a safer area for when and if something happens and we need to go up 8%, and then because we didn't go up maybe 2% this year, now we're at 10%. I think it could potentially come back to bite us. So I'm just concerned that staying at 0 now, when again, you hear from almost every municipality is having some sort of increase. Some again, well over double-digit increases. I worry that we're going to get ourselves dug into a hole. Thanks.
Oh, I get the last word on this. Fantastic. So as I mentioned previously, pretty excited to get this under 5%. And I remain excited about that. However, I would echo Councillor Mandel's concerns, because I do believe it puts us behind. So I think, council's done a good job of trimming expenses in certain areas and so on. But the one area I know we're really in the hole on, and yeah, Director Spears is still on the line. He could speak to this as well, is basically roads, replacing our roads. So, right away, I'm thinking, I'm doing the quick math in my head. I'm going, well, what if we just did a 5% increase and it's just to go into road reserves? And that's 125K that we just, 5%. That's what our taxation is, right? It's 25,000, right, per 1%, or is it 30? Can't remember. Oh, it's 30. Okay, well, there you go. Even better. 150,000 going towards roads, and increasing that reserve contribution. That's kind of where my mind turns to. So we've gone through the exercise of a long exercise of looking at all areas of the budget, and I appreciate all the hard work council has done on that. But I think we seriously have to look at some of these reserve funds and making sure that we are continuing to, because next year, we build on that 5% and it compounds. So to do, I think nothing or very minimal in some of these reserve funds is not necessarily the right answer. I'm not opposed to using other reserves to, like our accumulated surplus, COVID restart funds, to push down some of other costs, but we still have to look at increasing our contributions in other areas if we want to make an attempt to be caught up. So it's not a simple exercise by any stretch, and we really do have to pick and choose where we're going. But I was thinking about this other day, and a lot of people complain about Dickinson and how terrible of it is of a road. But I dare you to drive on Forest Turn Road. It's terrible, or way, whatever it's called, Forest Turn. Anyways, go up there and try that one on for size. It is a horrible road, and I think Director Spears could probably attest to that. It is like the lumpiest, bumpiest road, I think, in Lantzville. I don't know if it's got any sizable potholes on it. I haven't been up it recently, but stay off that road, man. Yeah, and it's a short road, but it's a horrible little road, and I really feel for the residents in that area. But on a more serious note, unless we start seriously increasing our contributions in that area, we're going to really fall behind. As we know, with respect to Dickinson Road, we're getting hammered on that. Like, the initial, cost estimates were not terrible, not great either, but since then they're basically almost doubled. And now we're looking at it as being a multi-year project or 2-year project because of the costs, and to think that we're just going to put in just another 100 and say potentially 50,000, or even if it's 100,000, it may not even put much of a dent in it. But we can't shortchange some of these reserve contributions. In fact, we need to have a serious look at increasing them. But right now, whatever, I guess I'll pump the brakes on that idea, but I wanted to float it simply because we should be seriously looking at it. And again, I think council's done a good job of pushing down the rest, and I am going to be making a follow-up motion after we dispose of this one with respect to the bylaw 215, which is the accumulated general surplus bylaw. But right now we're getting it close, so we can actually bring it forward to the public for comment. At that point, we can still make change. Once we're at second reading, we can still make that change, and then seriously look at and the big one I see right now that's staring us right in the face is our roads. We need to up the road reserve contributions. So as sexy as a 0% increase may look, it's not good for the municipality and for the ratepayers here, because my fear is that we will be looking again at double, percent increases again, or 10+% tax increases, because we're not seriously looking at that part. So I think, again, we've done a good job pushing down other parts of the requisition, but we need to look at you know, these, some of these really important, reserve contributions. The other one, and again, we had some feedback this evening with respect to the fire chief. We're seriously looking at 19,000.7% tax increase. Yeah, and that's to reduce our taxation down to zero using reserve funds, right? Is that the motion we have? Yeah. Okay. So, again, that's one I'm gonna hold on to, but that's a promise I'm not breaking. I will be bringing that back, because I think we need to seriously look at that. And even if, again, we're looking at funding that, because it sounded to me like the commitment would be there for next year for sure, and increasing that. But we just want to get a hold on what we've got now and push it to zero. Again, I don't think it's necessarily the right move, but that's just my opinion. But I think in terms of, we have accumulated surplus, and these are monies we've collected that we never spent. So maybe this year we take 19,000 out of that accumulated surplus and we put it towards that. Right now, the way the
Point of
bylaw-
order.
Yeah,
I'm just, if you're gonna have a continued discussion about the position, I probably should be recusing myself.
well, then I'd suggest you recuse yourself,
Okay.
because I'm not stopping.
Okay. Will do. I'm
Okay.
recusing myself from the conversation based on my conflict that my spouse is on the fire department.
Okay. So it's, again, I'll be bringing that back as, a future amendment. But again, I want to hear from the public. We've heard from a few residents. I thought it was well put together, respectful input. It's just a matter of, again, we're getting closer to having this thing ready for public consumption. And it's, again, between those two things, I think we can still achieve no greater than, well, it'll be under 5% or close to 5%. But again, I think council needs to take a long, hard look at these reserve contributions. Every year we don't put in, we just fall further behind. So I think Councillor Jones and then Councillor Lerner.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate your comments about the roads. There are a lot of terrible roads in Lantzville, no doubt about it. But when we take a look at the infrastructure expenses which are being proposed, for example, with Dickinson Road, we'll find that a relatively small portion of the total cost of over $4 million is actually going to the road surface. And a considerable amount of money is going into sidewalks and into storm water pipes in the ground underneath. And that's where our problem lies with, the decisions that we are being faced with, that this council will have to make. If we can get away from this gray infrastructure of pipes in the ground to manage our stormwater and do it with green infrastructure techniques and gray green techniques, we can save a huge amount of money over the years. And that has certainly been established in over the last decade with things that other communities are doing. So I simply am not as not comfortable with this direction that you're of interpretation that we have here. I feel that we will be able to make some wiser decisions with how we spend our money going forward, get a lot of our road surfaces improved, maximize our use of permeable surface walkways to get people moving around without generating all this water runoff that the pipes, have to deal with. And sidewalks, every time you look at a sidewalk, well, 10 years ago, it would cost $30,000 to do 100 feet of sidewalk. That was 10 years ago. It's going to be quite a lot more now. So well over $30,000 for 100 feet. So next time you go by a place where you see a sidewalk, just usually telephone pole to telephone pole is around 100 feet. Just, log up a good $40,000 or so for putting a sidewalk in on one side of the road. We can change our thinking, and in changing our thinking, we can save huge money in our infrastructure and get a lot more done for less. Thank you.
I was just gonna do a follow comment to that.
Yeah, it's a
know,
point of order,
Yeah,
please.
go ahead.
If we're not going to be discussing Councillor Mundell's topic she left for, would it be appropriate to ask her back in?
Yeah, we can bring her back unless Councillor Lerner, I'm done speaking to that, but, okay. We'll just wait. Okay, Councillor Lerner, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, so just to clarify, I support the motion on the floor, which is to use some of the, a small percentage of the COVID relief grant and maybe some of the general surplus to reduce the budget this year to 0%. It might be $100,000 total. What I would not support cutting any of our contributions to reserves. I see in the budget that each year there's contributions to every reserve. Some I do agree with the mayor are too small. But what I would note is that we do have the gas tax money that was not spent in the Shook Road area. We have the community asset contributions of about 159,000 unrestricted that we might be able to spend on amenities. And then on top of that, we have potentially hundreds of thousands from the province for infrastructure. And I would hope that we would spend that very wisely. And I would support in future years looking at, I see that our asset replacement, drainage and transportation infrastructure, the contribution is set to maintain a steady pace of just the same amount each year in this budget. So in 2024, I would absolutely consider revisiting that and increasing that contribution based on where we stand and how much money we may or may not have received from the province. And all of that. And as we progress through this budget, if, you know, we'll probably have some answers to those questions of how much we're receiving from the province and so on and so forth. But as far as the motion on the floor, I don't see it reducing any of our contributions. It just takes some money from the COVID relief grant. So I can still support that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Thank you. So now, just so you know, you may not be aware of this with this bylaw that was passed 2019. But in this bylaw, the accumulated general reserve bylaw, it states in there that it's council's prerogative to put the balance above $1 million of the accumulated reserve, which gives us about 387, 389 or something now, 387,000, to apportion it to the reserve funds of our choice. It says right there in the bylaw. So there's a lot of extra money that can go into reserves right there. The other thing is that it's $46,000 this year from new development. And however, the year before it was about 125,000. So I'm seeing an increase in this 46,000 for next year, and you have to take that into account. That's direct tax money. And the last thing I'll say with this is that, holy cow, we've had, last term we had very big increases in the number of staff. We've had big wage increases with staff this year. We've had very big increases with reserve funding. We really have. We've upped it big time last term to the tune of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So forgive me if I'm very proud that we're returning, what, 70 to 80,000 of this directly back to residents. So that means it's in their pocket. They can spend it on what they want. And I think that's only fair. They're the ones that paid for all these enormous increases the past few years. So if we're going into a surplus, that a lot of that surplus was created by residents, to give it back directly to them in such a small amount and they also funded this COVID grant fund with their taxes. So to return such a small amount, I'm very proud of it and make no apologies. So, but fully appreciate both your perspectives that totally agree with you that prudent financing, steady financing, and making sure our capital reserves are properly funded, totally agree with. And next year, I'm very much looking forward to restructuring all our finances this year to do that. But for this year, it's extremely important to me that we do this. I just remember all the doors I went to during the election and how many people are depending on us to do what we said, that we're going to reverse this trend of the big tax increases, and looks like we're doing it. So thank you.
Yeah, I just had a couple follow-up comments, but but you know, I don't think, were you next, Councilor Mandel? No? Okay. Well, anyways, just the permeable, sorry, services. I must say, I do enjoy walking on them on Dickinson because there's that little stretch, and where I live, and you know, to me, it's just fine. So, through to Director Spears, you know, with respect to the multi-use pathways, is the intent to always go with like a concrete surface, or are we looking at other alternatives?
Through your worship, no, basically, our standards do identify a trail that's actually covered with crush or a different permeable surface for sure. It all depends upon, you know, the factor of how much use and where it's at, and basically who's going to be using it, type of thing. That's what we look at.
Yeah, and again, just that little section, just on Dickinson, just as you go on up the hill towards Shook, it's actually quite nice, just the way it is there, being off the, you know, you're not on the road really anymore, and it's as far as I'm concerned, having that surface that works. But you know, again, I'm always open to hearing from others on that. No, just in terms of compromise, Councillor Savage, since we have 5 members of council and maybe 2 or 4 having a tax increase, would you settle for a 2% increase, or is it going to be a hard 0? So 2 out of 5, you know, 5%, you know, 2 of the 5. Can we settle on a 2%? Anyways, just teasing. Through to Councillor Mandel.
My answer is next year.
My answer to that is likely it's going to be possibly more than 2% next year because we're not doing 2% this year. So again, a lot of concerns around that. I know we have this COVID grant that we're spending liberally right now towards this, but we've just seen how, for example, that school path became a very important issue for this community. And I'm more than happy and glad that that Mayor Swain is taking initiative to take action to support the community to get something like that in place. So what happens when the next thing comes around the corner and now we've depleted our COVID grant or our gas tax or whatnot that we could have used towards something that also is urgent and needed for this community. So again, I'm a bit of a penny pincher saver, and I understand the desire to offer 0, but again, I worry that if we take away from these, and it's not a reserve, it's a grant, but if we take away all these monies from those as well, that when something urgent comes along, we might not have that ability to pull from those monies. And then again, we're hitting the reserves hard. And then we're in a position where we don't have money to fix up our infrastructure issues that are, and I can give you a couple more road names, Mayor Swain, if you want to have a fun drive down Blackjack. That's another one where you'll probably lose your front end, at least of a car my size. Yeah, I just think there's so many things that we need to get on top of. And I hear that people are tapped out, but I don't want them to feel super tapped out when we have to ask them for more money in the future if, you know, something major has to be done. And I don't want to get us into that position. So again, I hope we could reconsider that and shoot for something maybe in the 2 or 3% range.
And maybe Director Spears can give us the worst road in Lantzville, but it's, yeah, Forest Turn Way, in my opinion, is definitely the worst road in Lantzville. Not that it's a laughing matter, but, you know, as far as I'm concerned, if you can't, you know, I'd rather laugh about it than cry about it. So, Counselor Jones, go ahead.
Yes, the only thing I have to add to this is that you can't make everybody happy all of the time, and I've stated, you know, how I feel about this. I'm ready to vote, and however this goes, I hope that we've done our best job as council, and that the result ends up representing the will of the majority of residents, and that would be a very good day in my book. So, yeah.
Okay. And just for the record, I am supporting this motion. All right. Unless there's anything further, I will call the question. All those in favor and opposed, noting Councilor Mandel's opposed, it carries. That takes it, I'm gonna go next. Sorry. Doing it, and I think this motion is in order. If someone wants to call point of order, fine by me, but I'll go for it. That bylaw number 215 be amended in section 6. Well, here you can, yeah, I can give you the title, yeah.
I think he's doing another one. I don't know which one he's doing, but.
Do you want a pen? Yeah, mine.
Are you using the GL number?
Nope.
No, this is the bylaw.
So, yeah, so that bylaw number 215 be amended in section 6 to permit the use of funds for balancing the annual budget, including both operational and capital project expenditures as determined by council.
And the title of that bylaw?
Yeah,
Oh, I have it on my screen.
just 2 secs.
I didn't get the last.
Okay, so I'll just read the whole thing. So that bylaw 215 be amended in section 6 to permit the use of funds for balancing the annual budget, including both operational and capital project expenditures as determined by council. And that's seconded by Councillor Savage. So the name of the bylaw is a bylaw to establish accumulated general operating surplus reserve fund. That's the title of the bylaw.
Did we get the title where it's the citation? It's on the bylaw.
Oh,
Yeah. The bylaw.
so District of Lantzville accumulated general operating surplus reserve fund bylaw 215. So District of Lantzville accumulated general operating surplus reserve fund. It's a mouthful. AKA surplus.
Number 215.
Yeah, it's 215, comma, 219. All right, so not much really to say here. It's just in the bylaw as it's worded now. It just says funds in this reserve and the interest earned shall not be used to balance an annual operating budget. It must only be used for capital projects that do not add annual maintenance costs as determined by the District of Lantzville Council from time to time. So that's really what it is. So even with the capital projects, again, the caveat is do not add an annual maintenance costs. So that also limits the use. So this just kind of opens up that use and hopefully not to be abused, but be wisely used. So anyways.
And just for clarity, it would be that the staff be instructed to bring forward a bylaw amendment to bylaw whatever. So it won't actually, nothing will happen until council gives that bylaw 3 readings and then adoption.
Yes, that's correct, yeah. So I'm just assuming it's gonna come back to, yeah, okay, thank you. All right, so Counselor Savage is seconder and then.
Yeah,
through the
thank
rest
you. I'll
of council.
certainly support this. This is a housekeeping measure. This was the intent when we amended it before, so you're just cleaning up the amendment to make it clear. That sounds just fine. I'll support it. Thank you.
And through the rest of the council? Okay, hearing or seeing nothing, I will call the question then. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, Counselor Savage, the floor is yours. You were wanting to make a
Yes,
motion?
thank you very much. No, I'm all finished. I was just wondering if I may, please, this is a budget matter, it's appropriate, but in keeping Director Spears with, through Chair to Director Spears, please, that I indicated I made the motion for next Wednesday to get a cost estimate for a gravel path from Peterson Road to School Road, and then another estimate for Leyland to Peterson. If you'd be so kind, maybe at the next council meeting, that's next Wednesday, to give us some options there. I know Councillor Jones mentioned the Canada Way trail stuff they put on there. And so if you have other options, maybe you could present, we'd certainly appreciate it. Then we can make a decision on what cost estimates we want. Thank you.
Sorry, it's challenging for staff to perform work ahead of the motion. So the motion is next Wednesday. You'll be considering, given the instruction then, to provide cost estimates. So it's, would be unusual for, based on a comment at tonight's meeting, for staff to then do the work before the motion has passed.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not asking to do any work. It's when he's lying in bed at night, thinking of these
he has a
things,
few
that
other
all
things
these
he's
things will
working on
float
at
into his
night.
mind. And go, yeah, I
Yeah,
got an
yeah,
idea.
no.
So that's all.
If I may, Counselor Savage, I think maybe what would be helpful is even if we had just, and this could be a simple email that goes out or information is provided, but just even the cost per meter of doing like a crush path versus a paved path. I'm sure this information is easy to look up or to get. And through to Director Spears, if there's any information that's easy to provide to council that would give us a rough estimate, then, are we,
Yeah, no, sorry.
or are you looking for?
You
more?
misinterpreted my
Okay, go
request.
ahead.
It's just for types of surfaces on the trail. There's no cost. We're going to be making that motion next week. All I'm asking is that maybe he can bring us some ideas of types of surfaces, so then we can build it into the motion next week.
Well, I think that's a simple request, and you can email it, or Director Spears, do you need any further direction, or is that something that's, from what Councillor Savage is indicating, he's just looking for, recommended surface types that could be used for this multi-use path?
Through your worship, I totally understand the question, and I will come prepared with different types of surfacing that's been used throughout the area, for sure.
Okay, sure, thank you. Is there anything
And
further?
you do not have to do it at night while you're sleeping. Well,
I had not planned to.
All right. Okay, so through the rest of the council, is there anything further? So we've gone through a bunch of amendments, some motions. All right, so we do have item 3 under, that's dealing with the scheduling next meeting. Someone prepared to make that motion? We don't really have a time or date, but Councillor Lerner.
Yes, we've made some motions tonight, and I know that we are also on a little bit of a timeline with when the budget's due. So just through your worship to staff, what would be a reasonable timeline to get the updates to the budget with tonight's motions so that we can plan for scheduling a meeting? Thank you.
So that's probably through to Deputy Director Nugent, maybe, for timelines?
And I think there's still some outstanding decisions for council to do, for her to know what to put into the budget. Or,
Well, yeah, I think anything that's related to taxation, I think we've covered off. There may be some, are you referring to strategic planning? Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, there are things that will likely roll out of strategic planning that, but I think those are gonna be not necessarily taxation items. Those will just be, funding out of reserves and other things, so. But that will come at a later date when that document's ready to be made public and so on. And again, we can amend this financial plan as much as we want, throughout the year. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. So Deputy Director Nugent, did you have a date for us to, or recommend to council?
Mr. Mayor, and through to the rest of council, we need a week lead time for the meeting, correct, Director Coates? For the agenda?
Yes, sorry, I forgot you're not in the room, sorry. Yes.
Um, so if I put the changes together for, and had it ready for next Wednesday, or see, what day is it? Yeah, I'll need a couple of days because we have a lot going on. It would be, I would venture a week from next Wednesday. Does that conflict with another meeting, Director Coates? Or do we want to stick to certain days for the financial plan meetings, for the special meetings?
So, sorry, for clarity, you're looking at a special council meeting on Wednesday, March 15th? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I'm just kind of throwing it out there. Does that work for the I don't have a calendar, a meeting calendar in front of me. I apologize for that.
Sorry, if for some reason or another that doesn't work, the 15th, then we'll take it upon ourselves to reschedule. But I see Councillor Mundell looking at her schedule. I think I'm probably gonna be okay. And Councillor Lerner thinks he's okay, and Councillor Jones is nodding.
And
Councillor
just for
Savage is
clarity,
looking off into the distance.
for clarity, you'd be presenting the bylaw for first two readings and public presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so were you going to make this motion, Councillor Lerner? And then the only thing, just before we get into it, is there is a tag on there of scheduling public engagement events. Now, I'm drawing a complete blank, and I don't think we've ever done that with respect to the
No.
financial plan.
So it's always been that we promote in the newsletter and on our website, every meeting is public input.
Yeah.
And you're certainly receiving written submissions and people attending, and staff, of course, that's fine. We're more than meeting our requirements. We were not sure if council had something else in mind, so. But I think if we publicize that the 15th will be the presentation, that's.
So I was just bringing that to Councillor Lerner's attention, just in case he may want to drop it off at the end of that motion, so.
I appreciate that, thank you. So I will make the motion that a special council meeting be held Wednesday, March 15th at 6 p.m. at the District of Lantzville Municipal Hall for presentation of the 2023 to 2027 five-year financial plan, public input and consideration of first two readings of, quote, District of Lantzville 2023 to 2027 five-year financial plan, bylaw number 325, 2023, end quote.
Seconded by Councillor Savage. Discussion.
Nope, thank you.
This is just scheduling the meeting. We can save our big speeches, I think, for considering the night is moving on. With respect, I mean, that we can save our speeches. So, okay, I'm gonna move then to call in question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. I'll just make a motion now to extend past 9, actually, it's a special meeting. We don't have to do that forget I said that. So moving on, public clarification, we have one member in the gallery. Um, Persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record and the agenda item for which they are seeking clarification, and may speak once for up to 2 minutes to ask clarification questions. For example, how did the vote go? About any technicalities, requests, or interpretation of abbreviations or jargon used this evening. So this is your chance. Okay, anybody remotely registered? I don't see anybody, but okay. All right, so at this point, I'll need that yellow here. Oh, is it in there? Ah, there it is. All right, so again, I'm just gonna make the, oh, actually, I don't need that. Sorry, a motion to close the meeting to the public pursuant to sections 91 A, C, I, and K of the Community Charter. So is there a seconder? So seconded by Councillor Savage. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. We are now in the closed session, so we'll clear the gallery.
Do you want me to call you at the same number, Kathy?
You missed something.